Hello, everyone, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever all of you are dialing in. I see a lot of folks dialing in from all over the world. So thank you so much for joining today. My name is Rajiv Desai, and my pronouns are he, him, and his. And I currently serve as the board chair for ORAM. ORAM is the Organization for Refuge, Asylum, and Migration. And I'll talk a little bit more about what the organization does. But before that, a very warm welcome to all of you for dialing into this session today titled Black, LGBTIQ, Refugee, and Intersectional Lens. This is the first of many informative educational webinars that ORAM will be hosting for all of you. And ORAM is one of the first nonprofit organizations to advocate for and assist people who are fleeing persecution solely based on their sexual orientation and their gender identity. And so what ORAM does is it delivers legal assistance, livelihood programs, advocacy, and education, and of course, in 2020, a lot of COVID-19 emergency response. And while the work spans a global audience, the main work also happens in transit countries such as Kenya, Mexico, and Greece. And then ORAM also supports the LGBTIQ asylum seekers and refugees from the moment they arrive in their first country of asylum to being resettled to a safe third country. Now, for those that are listening in already, you may be wondering, so what do all these terms mean? Do we use them interchangeably? So I just wanted to level set with everyone on the definitions of refugee and asylum seeker, just so that we are clear on what these terms mean throughout the session. So a refugee is a person who has fled their country of origin and is unable or unwilling to return because of a well-founded fear of being persecuted solely because of their race, religion, nationality, membership to a particular social group, or even political opinion. An asylum seeker, on the other hand, is a person who has left their country and is seeking protection from that persecution in another country, but who hasn't yet been legally recognized and is waiting to receive a decision on their asylum claim. And these terminologies are important as you hear from our amazing panelists today on what is their experiences and their challenges across the global landscape. So why are we having this conversation now? And why is now so important, right? And countries around the world continue to discriminate, implement non-inclusive policies over layers and layers of social and cultural stigma for various identities, many of which I mentioned earlier. And as we all know, the current developments in 2020 have made these situations even more horrific for many. It's time to really amplify the conversation and our actions for those who face persecution due to who they are at their authentic selves at multiple levels. So many of you might be thinking of the word intersectionality. We've heard this word a lot. And really, intersectionality is this idea where individuals may experience or face multiple forms of prejudice simultaneously, right? So if they come from multiple different identities, so for example, in today's webinar, we're talking about being Black, being LGBTIQ, and being a refugee, those three identities just by themselves already have layers and layers of prejudice, and that level of intersectionality can really be a challenge for many just from having a good livelihood. So for the purpose of today's session, for the next 40 or 45 minutes, how have we organized our time? I did explain the terms refugee and asylum seekers, and so we will keep that broader process in mind. And we will first hear from Craig, Paris, and Vanilla about their experiences, challenges, and advocacy work in Kenya. And then we will cross the Atlantic, and in the second half, we will hear from Adafe, Jacob, and Uchechukwu on their experiences and journeys in seeking asylum in North America and the work they are doing for the broader community. And in the end, we may have some time for questions as well from all of you, so stay tuned for those. We are connected from multiple different locations. From a technology perspective, we are streaming this event on Facebook and on YouTube, and you're welcome to participate in the comments field. We would love to hear where you're from. And our awesome team will be sharing helpful links in the conversations throughout. And of course, before I forget, a huge shout out to our ORAM team members, including Bella, Santiago, and Alex for helping bring this event to life. And as we go through the session, we will discuss how you all can get more involved, support the work that the panelists are doing, and how can we help broader refugees and asylum seekers across all of these different identities and spectrums, and showing solidarity to them during these difficult times. So like I mentioned earlier, first we will hear from Craig, Paris, and Vanilla, who are currently in Kenya, and we will hear about their experiences of seeking asylum in Kenya, and they're originally from Uganda. So with that, let's hear from Craig and Vanilla first. So Craig and Vanilla, thank you so much for joining this panel on discussing the transit country experiences for refugees and asylum seekers within the LGBTIQ community. For all of the audiences on the line, would love for you to first just introduce yourselves, where you are, who you are, and what kind of work do you do for your different organizations. Craig, we can start with you first.
Yeah, thank you, Rab. I'm Craig Paris, and I'm the Executive Director of Refugee Coalition of East Africa. It's an NGO membership. It's a coalition of community-based organizations which are queer-led here in Kenya. And the director of I lead that exciting team of queer refugees. Yeah, thanks.
Great. Thank you, Craig. Vanilla, you want to go next?
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Vanilla Hussein. I'm from Refugee Trans Initiative. I'm the director and also a secretary board member of Refugee Coalition of East Africa. And Refugee Trans Initiative basically came about as a group of transgenders that saw the need for the trans refugees' voice to be heard, because for the longest time there was really a sense where transgenders were sidelined and there was not really advocacy for them, and our voices were never heard. But Refugee Trans Initiative came about to bring a change to that, to create advocacy and a platform where transgenders could get empowered and live their life freely. Yeah, so I'm so excited to be part of that team.
Thank you so much for that, Vanilla. And it's so great to have both of you dialing in from Kenya and sharing your experiences. So I think for the folks on the line, why don't we start with an opening question around, what led both of you to seek asylum? Can you maybe share a little bit more on that? Craig, I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that. For me, I left my home country because of the persecution. Gay people are persecuted based on their orientation, their sexual orientation and gender identity. And by the time I left, there was the anti-gay bill that was passed, and there was gross persecution and hunting down of gay people. So for me, I left, and I came here to seek asylum.
Okay. And just to reconfirm, what was your original country again?
Uganda. I left my home country with Uganda.
Perfect. Vanilla, how about you?
Well, basically, almost everyone that is in this process has faced a form of persecution, one or the other. And stories are basically similar to one another, but I personally left because of family and the fact that not only had they discovered that I'm gay, and also that I'm trans even made things worse, because they couldn't understand why all of a sudden, as growing up, you start getting so much interest in dressing up and doing makeup, and everyone sees you different. And that's just how you feel, that's just who you've been, and you're trying to bring out this, this real you. So it was really hard, whereby some family members were even threatening, to like kill you or do something bad to your life. That led me to run away from Uganda, and coming to Kenya also hasn't been easy, and it's something we are still working on. I'm still working on, because it's a every day you face, like every day from ever since I left Uganda, I've been facing the same trauma and same persecution in Uganda, also here. But I'm glad that at least in Kenya, it's a bit more lenient and a bit more, well, a bit more safe than being back at home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Vanilla and Craig, both thank you for sharing that. I think you both touched upon some key points that actually leads beautifully into my next question, which is, how does being Black, LGBTIQ, and refugee impact your life and experiences in Kenya? And what are some of the challenges that you're facing, right? So Vanilla, you talked about things getting just a little bit better in Kenya, but there are still a lot of challenges. So maybe Craig, you can start by sharing a bit more around what has that experience been like in Kenya, the challenge.
Yeah, so for the black queers here in Kenya or in Uganda or all over Africa, it's something that is an abomination to start with. They feel that it's non-African, it's not from Africa or whatever. It's a white man's. Some people call it a disease, and being queer here and being black, already you have that the people or your people don't really get it, that they think that you're from another part of the country, or you're just doing this because you're getting support from another part of the country or the Western countries. But living here is that you get the persecution from your fellow Africans, but also because the laws that are governing, or because the laws that are against homosexuals or gay people or queer refugees or queer people in Africa are from the Western world to start with. So for me, being a black queer refugee here, the odds are really against me, but we have to work hard to make it work. That we have to educate. It's going to take so much and all that, but in the end, being black and being queer, it's not easy here in Africa. Yes.
Yeah. When we started the session, we talked a lot about this notion of intersectionality and how layers and layers of our identities that drive more prejudice can have a compounding effect, right? So even within the LGBTIQ group, we often know that the trans population has a far worse experience than the rest of the LGBTIQ group. So Vanilla, can you share a little bit more about what are you seeing and hearing and experiencing for the trans community, in addition to what Craig said?
Yeah, in addition to that, literally it's whereby even getting healthcare services, where you're black and maybe you're LGBTI and more so a refugee, it's not easy to access these services, because even if you find, for example, a Kenyan and refugee, and you happen to both be maybe trans or maybe gay, but there's that sense of, even the healthcare provider will be like, you're not from here, There's already that sense of discrimination. You're not from here, and then you happen to be trans, you happen to be unreligious. So it's really been hard for the LGBTI refugee community, especially the transgenders, because of accessing healthcare, even getting jobs here. Like, once people get to know that you're trans and you're a refugee, it's really hard. No one is going to employ you. Transgenders and other members of the community, face this harassment through sex work. Maybe you lack money to fend for yourself, and you see an opportunity maybe of doing sex work and stuff, and still in that field you'll still find so much challenges, so much harassment. People will be abusing you and taking advantage of you. So it's been really hard for the trans refugee, whereby even when you find out that you're HIV positive, or you find out that you're not healthy, and you try also like probably to reach out to these different organizations or people that are to help you or are to help take measures to ensure that the LGBTI refugees at least have, some sense of belonging and some sense of that. If today I'm not well, I know who I could talk to, or I know where I could go to, and not feel like I'm being misgendered or I'm being underlooked or discriminated just because I'm transgender. And that has been happening for a very long time. And it's not been easy for for many of us.
I think it's what I picked
And
up.
also to
Go ahead, Craig.
add on that, being a black queer person in Africa, you're faced with some sort of reverse racism. That I can give an example of when Stephen Fry interviewed some minister in Uganda, and everyone knew that he was gay, but they never attacked him or whatsoever. But for another queer person, let it be a journalist in Uganda, to go to interview and they disclose their queerness, they'll be automatically attacked. So there is also racism here in Africa, that being queer, on top of that, you have the burden of racism. Some queer people from abroad or from elsewhere, when they come to Kenya, let's say, they're not really frowned upon as queer black people here. So like being a queer refugee, also being a black queer person in Africa, you have to deal with the homophobia plus the racism too. So the Black Lives Matter really revived or reminded us of the challenges that we go through here, and also knowing that it's racism that is bringing all the crisis in America and everywhere, and it's the same racism that is bringing problems here in Africa for queer people.
Wow. Yeah. So, Craig, you mentioned a couple of things that I think you mentioned the Black Lives Matter movement, which is, definitely been in the spotlight for many countries. And then you have to put the layer of COVID-19 over that, right? So keeping Black Lives Matter in mind and COVID-19 and everything else that's been going on in this year, how are you preparing your members for resettlement, right? You both talked about the layers of challenges that come with race, sexual orientation, identity. So how do both of you work with your different members and communities to prepare them for resettlement, given all of these complexities?
To begin with, the coalition was specifically made for that. It was made to mobilize these different queer groups that are here, that yes, we are here in this process of waiting resettlement, but what do we do? And we had challenges and everywhere, and we had some consultation some years back, and this is what we came with. This is what we came up with, something that could equip us with skills or tools to help us once we're resettled. And the coalition unites all these different groups that do different things, be it livelihoods, be it capacity development, be it trainings and all that. And we are all in breath because we know we will need these skills. We know that there's so much that is against us, even where we are running to. There is this gross systematic racism that is going on, killing of black people, taking them as if their lives are not like their lives don't matter. So the coalition and the membership has to help people here, even with educating them. It starts with even interpersonal relationships here. Be it your boyfriend, be it my boyfriend, I have to educate him about the racism and the intersectionality of everything, and how patriarchy comes in play, and how all these things, homophobia and transphobia, they're all connected, and how we are going to go about it. So it takes the whole community, it takes me, it takes Vanilla, it takes even the partners, even our supporters, and even the social media, the connectivity, the fact that right now, all over the world, people are connected, and what affects in America definitely will affect you here, or what affects in Kenya definitely will affect someone else here in the world. So us as the coalition and us as the queer refugee community here, we work with the stakeholders, work with the community here in Kenya. We work with our people all over. We want to create awareness. And what happened with George Floyd, we created awareness about that. What is happening with Breonna Taylor, we are creating awareness about it, because all the things ultimately affect us, even if we are here. And we want to tell people that we need to stop racism, we need to stop homophobia and transphobia, and every patriarchal hand that is fighting to suppress people, to discriminate people, and it's upon us as the coalition and the membership too.
That's really helpful how you described all of those actions, Craig. Vanilla, earlier you mentioned, I think you said it really quickly, but I want to just make sure everybody heard it, is this idea of belonging, right? Like you move to a new country for a better life, and there's a sense of belonging that everyone is seeking. And I think that's a good transition into our last question, which is, what are you all doing to make the situation better, right? So as both of you lead organizations and do active work in this space, what advocacy strategies have you developed over the years, and what have some key achievements been in the last couple of years?
Majorly, like, skills development has really been an impact to the queer refugees, asylum seekers, in a sense that a lot of us now have these skills that we are able to sustain ourselves one or the other. We are able to create, like, for example, myself, able to train people that don't know how to do probably nails or some skills that I know, and I'm able to pass it to others. And also, Craig has skills that he knows, and so forth, so forth. So it's brought about a big change whereby this training has really helped us sustain ourselves one way or the other. We get to save, we get to not only provide for ourselves, but also provide for the community, and the livelihood trainings, and also the fact that we also gain capacity building, whereby we have learned to look out for opportunities that come. We've learned to advocate for ourselves and for our fellow refugees. So this has also brought about a sense of belonging, that we have each other's back, and we can always, rely and support each other one way or the other with the little resources that we get. So we get the trainings, and we ensure that it not only stops here, these trainings, that wherever we go, it's what we'll carry with us. It's what we'll keep on doing and keep on developing as much as sorry.
Yeah, just to add on, we devised that we would use the strategy of advocacy campaigns, where we create awareness with what is happening all over the world, or what it affects us, and what we need to do, how to, just saying, let's end racism, let's end homophobia. We start with those. We also strategize to mobilize resources, fundraising, reaching out to all stakeholders and supporters, creating capacities in ourselves, also development capacities, mentorship, transferring the skills that we learn to the next person. And once someone is resettled, we know that they are leaving someone who is going to take upon themselves to teach the next person, or maybe the things that we learn, you share, like Vanilla said, we share it amongst ourselves. I could teach him, or Vanilla could teach me. So basically, we have three strategies: advocacy through campaigns, fundraising, creating resources, and also developing capacities.
That's really powerful, and thank you both, Craig and Vanilla, for sharing that. And so for those on the line, if you want to learn more about more of Craig's work and Vanilla's work, definitely check out Refugee Coalition of East Africa and Refugee Trans Initiative on social media. You can follow them, you can support them, stay abreast of the work that they're doing. And again, Craig and Vanilla, thank you so much for not only sharing your personal experiences, but also the challenges that you and your communities are facing in Kenya and in East Africa. And everything that you've shared, we've learned a lot. So again, a huge heartfelt thank you to both of you for coming today and sharing with us. So for the folks who are just dialing in, welcome to this panel discussion by ORAM around the experiences of being Black, LGBTIQ, and refugee from ORAM, which is the Organization for Refuge, Asylum, and Migration. We heard from Craig and Vanilla in Kenya, and now we're going to pivot over to a few more amazing panelists and speakers on the North American side of the house. But before that, I just wanted to give a huge shout out to all of those participants online who are currently viewing, who helped contribute financially to be part of this event. I know we made this event both optional with tickets, but also free so that everyone could really attend, and we truly appreciate the financial support. And that said, if any of you are looking to contribute either individually or through your organizations, your employers, your employee resource groups, if you're part of your company's ERGs, we've covered a few organizations today, including ORAM. So we're sharing the links in the comments in the chat. And so definitely a great way to support us, but also get registered so you can hear more about upcoming events, developments on our end, as well as how are we, helping the lives of refugees and asylum seekers worldwide. With that, I would love to pivot over to North America, where I am joined by Edafe, Jacob, and Uchichekwu. Let me just make sure the technology is working for all of us. Great. Perfect. I think Uchichukwu might be on mute. There we go. Perfect. And we'll give Jacob a quick second to dial in here. But in the meantime, Edafe and Uchichukwu, thank you so much for joining. Can we just start by having you both introduce yourselves, your names, where you're originally from, your journey, your experiences of fleeing and seeking asylum in the United States or Canada, and also what your pronouns are. We'll start with you, Edafe.
Oh, good afternoon, everybody, or whatever time where you are. My name is Edafe Boro. I go with the pronouns he/him. I'm the executive director of RDJ Refugee Shelter in Harlem. We provide housing for asylum seekers and refugees in New York City. I migrated to the US in 2016 based on my sexual orientation as a gay man from Nigeria. And I currently live in New York City, fighting for a better world for other gay men seeking protection in America. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Edafe. We see Jacob as well. Uchichukwu, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon from wherever you're calling from. My name is Uchechukwu Onwa, and my pronouns are he, him, his, or you call me Uche. So I'm originally from Nigeria. Like Edafe, I migrated to the United States in 2017 in search for safety and freedom. And currently I work as a co-director at Queer Detainee Empowerment Project, which is an LGBTQI plus organization that provide support and services for the LGBTQI plus gender non-conforming and HIV plus immigrants that are currently in immigration detention. Those that are recently released from detention, or those that are at risk of being detained or being deported, in securing structural health and well-being, educational support, legal support, and emotional support and services.
Great. Thank you, okay. Jacob, can you introduce yourself, where you're from originally, your journey, as well as your pronouns?
Wow, that's good. Hello, guys. I'm so happy to be part of you. And my name is Jacob Sekito. I'm from originally from Uganda, but I've been in Kenya for some 4.5 years. And you can call me he or she, whatever you feel like you're comfortable with. And currently, I'm working with Refugee Coalition of East Africa as an board member. Refugee Coalition of East Africa is in East Africa, Nairobi, Um, then before that, I was working as a director from COSA Community Support Initiative for Refugees. It's an organization which I started with a few members, and a few of them have been resettled right now. And the current delegate is called Solomon Humuza. So right now I'm in Canada, Waterloo, Ontario. I think you guys know why, and I'm doing fine. Yeah. So I'm from Mark right now, and I'm so happy to be part of you guys.
Thank you, Jacob.
Yeah.
So again, thank you to all three of you for not only joining, but also willing to share your experiences. I have a couple of questions that we can kind of use to navigate the next 15 minutes or so. So why don't we start with just talking a little bit more about the United States, right? So how does racism and institutionalized discrimination impact LGBTIQ refugees here in the US? And I think Idafe and Uche, this might be a great question for you both.
So I'm just going to say that racism affects all Black people wherever they find themselves around the world. But in UK, if you go to London, it's like you think that is maybe 13% of people in London are Black people. But when you leave outside London, it's all white people. It's less than 3% of England population is Black. America has a large population of Black people, 13% of Black people. One thing I want to reflect on is that as much as there's difference between white and Black in America, it is only in America that you have the opportunity to criticize what it means to be an American, whether you are a white person or a Black person. That means America has a very strong democracy. But for a democracy to be stronger, marginalized people need a stronger voice for that democracy to be stronger. So what I think is happening to Black Americans and also displaced people is what have happened before repeating itself. Protectionism is a tactic used by people who are threatened by economic indices to try and drive people away from their country. So Americans are thinking that migrants are coming to take away from their economic resources. But the main issue is that technology have disenfranchised a lot of people and left many people unemployed. So the problem is not migrants who are coming to seek protection, but lack of educational opportunities for people to take on the jobs of tomorrow. So this has created a problem for refugee policy in America. So the government now use the lens of protectionism to try and prevent people who are Black and brown from coming to this country. So a majority of migrants who are seeking protection are from third world countries or developing countries, quote unquote. And the refugee policy was changed in October. Trump announced that it's only 15,000 refugees that are going to be taken. That means Black refugees and LGBTQ people who are migrating to America as a means of safety are going to look for somewhere else to go. So race in turn affects immigration policy as much as economic fear and scare leads to protectionism, which kind of affects Black and brown immigrants coming to this country. That's what I say for now.
Thank you, Adafe. Uche, do you want to add anything from your perspective and your work in New York?
Yes. The impact of racism in the United States is so alarming. And just like Adafe said, racism impact or affect people in different ways. The experience that I, as a Black migrant, queer person, the way I experience racism is definitely different from the way that an American citizen who is also Black and also queer experience racism, because I am not just discriminated because I'm Black, because I'm queer, gay, but I'm also being discriminated because I am an immigrant and a refugee who is living in the United States. So there's like layers of layers of discrimination that racism. That racism impact the queer and immigrant communities in the United States. Talk about immigration. the queer folks who are just coming here, we're all coming here just to seek safety and freedom. A lot of us are being discriminated in our home country because of our sexuality. But when we get here, this is a place that we have always dreamed to be like, this land of freedom and safety. But when we get here, the story is different from what we are being told and from what we see in the media. Right? So the immigration system also have a lot of impacts, negative impact in the lives of queer immigrant communities, and it is alarming. And also the rise of and death of and diseases, particularly that are tied to medical neglect, unsanitary conditions, and also inadequate medical resources. Right? The queer immigrants, we are often being denied access to critical medical condition, such as HIV testing and treatment in immigration detention, hormone therapy for trans people. Within the last 2 years, there have been a case of two tragic deaths of HIV plus trans women that died in immigration detention, and this because they were held in solitary confinement, and again because of lack of medical treatment, because they complained several times about their HIV status and nothing they weren't taken care of. We had a trans client who's a trans woman that were kept in solitary confinement for 2 years, and this person had multiple suicidal attempts. Finally, she was released, but you can imagine the impact that would have on her. I personally also experienced this, right? When I came to here, I was detained, and not just that I was taken away from the airport by immigration, but I also was chained, I was shackled. And not just that I was shackled, but my mouth was covered with mask, right? And then, like, of course, that was like the first time I had to be in that situation when the CBP officer was asked why did they have to cover my mouth and my nose. What he said that he is from he is from Africa. He could be coming to the United States with virus. He could be coming here with Ebola. He started mentioning names. That was like the first time that I experienced firsthand discrimination and racism just because of my skin color. In Nigeria, I don't know anything about being black or being white because we are all one, right? But coming to the United States, I have to deal with the discrimination because of my race, and the impact that have on me is something that most people don't know until I say it, right? Until I tell them. So the impact of racism in the United States in the lives of the LGBTQI plus immigrant and refugees are so alarming.
Wow. Uche, thank you for that. And Idafe, thank you for your earlier comments as well. And I really appreciated how you both not only covered some of the systemic issues that we are all facing in this topic, both from the government side, but also from the societal side, but also the day-to-day experiences, right? And what kept resonating in my mind was earlier in the session, we talked to Vanilla and Craig in Kenya, and Vanilla was talking about how the situation got a little bit better from Uganda to Kenya, right? And I think when I talk to my friends about why am I supporting ORAM and other organizations that fight for refugees and asylum seekers, there's this notion that, oh, once they get here, everything should be fine, right? America is the great land of all the benefits and all the freedoms. But I'm so humbled by what you both are saying in terms of it only gets a little bit better, right? There's just so much more work to do. And I think that's the work that Oram and everyone else has kind of cut out for them. So thank you both for sharing those provoking and eye-opening details about both your experiences and the work that you're doing. If we can open up the question a little bit more around the wider LGBTIQ community, and this is a question for all of you, and Jacob, will start with you. What does the wider LGBTIQ community need to know about the experiences of being Black, LGBTIQ, and a refugee, and how important is increasing visibility in those spaces, right? So, I'll just rephrase that very quickly to say, and I'm openly gay as well, and within the LGBTIQ community, sometimes there's a sense that if you are LGBTIQ, your sense of lack of privilege ends there, right? You're already stigmatized, you're already facing a lot of persecution. But then there are other layers to it. So what would you say, to the LGBTIQ community about your experiences as being Black, refugee, and LGBTIQ?
Okay. I'll try to be a bit brief. First of all, like before we are being resettled here, we have this mind like when we are here, everything is okay. Like we just come and like we can do whatever we want. But when you reach here, things are different.
Yeah.
Things are very different. Uh, like the trans people, like the people who like to express who they are, you know, they don't get that chance. Like still, like now, let me give you an example. Like at work, it's not like you tell people who you are. You get that. But there is that look someone can just give you, and then you feel like you should keep on keeping yourself low. You get that? Like you feel like you talk to someone, like to even express who you are, but you just let it be. You say, let me just live the life I want. Like let me just be who I am. But sometimes you fail to bring out the inner you, like to express what you feel like. You get that? So like at the end, you get that depression and you feel like, oh, I thought like when I'm going to be here, things are gonna be a bit different. But they are quite, I mean, they're going to be like, yeah, going to be different, but you find it like things are like making you or pushing you really like they're suppressing you and like you cannot show the world who you are. You get that? So you end up because I've tried to follow up a bit of like sometimes people like they just come in and then they feel like yeah we're gonna leave or like but at the end of the you find someone whom you knew and it ends up like changing totally. You get that? Because
Yeah.
he couldn't get that chance like to show who he is or who he is, something like that. You get that? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I can say about it.
Idafe and Uche, anything to add to that? What would you like to communicate to the LGBTIQ community about the compounding effects of these three identities?
I think that there's a lot of misconception, but you know, it's not our responsibility to educate people that have hold the majority of power for a very long time. The major misconception I think a lot of these people are is the willingness to learn about people who they consider to be on the margins of society. So there's always this perception about a black person to always be somebody looking for economic opportunity, especially if you come from a developing country as regard to being from a developed country. So I think that if there's any advice I have for white gay men is that sometimes you have to keep your mouth shut and allow other people's voices to be heard. When they were fighting for gay rights, it was white gay men in front of everything. You don't see trans people, you don't see lesbians, you don't see bisexual. So it's the same thing with race, is that sometimes I know you want to spearhead the voices of other people, but the best way they could fight the fight is to
Yes.
allow them to have a seat in the table and let them say it from their mouth. So that is what I would say. Step back and other people should step forward. People who have the issue deserve to be at the front and center of solving that
100%.
problem.
Uche, anything to add to that?
Yes. So I just want to quickly add to or elaborate more on what Edafe just talked about. I think centering is very, very important. Like, you need to start centering the voices of Black people in your work, not just Black people, but also Black migrants.
Yeah.
Because again, our experiences are so different. The way a Black American citizen experiences racism, discrimination is different from the way that a Black immigrants experience racism. So we need to start centering the voices of those that are marginalized, those that are discriminated, the impacted communities. We need to start centering the voices in the work. We need to start giving leadership power to the people who don't have this power, because a lot of the American citizens, you already have a lot of privilege. Even as a Black American person, American citizen, you have a lot of privileges. Even though you experience this racism, but you have so many privilege that an immigrant does not have, right? Because we have to go through a lot of struggle to just get here alone. It is not easy leaving your homeland, leaving your family, your friends, and then coming to live in the United States. That alone has a lot of mental implication and impact, right? So we need to start putting these communities that are most times being forgotten. We need to start recognizing them and putting them in leadership skills, leadership power. We also need to start recognizing that our stories are different. You might see me, I might look good, I might look fine, you don't know what I'm going through, right?
That's
So
it.
do not just be too quick to judge because you see me, I'm dressing cute, I'm looking good, and this and that. You feel like everything is okay. Everything is not okay. You have to ask questions. Ask me, what am I going through? How can you help me? Right? Because you have some resources that I do not have. So you have to ask questions about how you can help these communities because we are marginalized. We are not being recognized, right? Don't just make assumption when you see someone. Um, Also, when we talk about, I think someone mentioned the Black Lives Matter movement. I guess it was maybe from the other panelists. When we talk about Black Lives Matter movement, the Black migrants are not being included in that narratives. And for me personally, it is something that I have been fighting for, making sure that the Black migrants are being centered, are being um, included in that narratives of Black Lives Matter movement because we are also Black and our lives also matters. And we also experience a lot of things like discrimination, stigma, and even we're also being killed. When Black immigrant is being killed, the media don't even talk about it. Oluwatoyin, who is a Black immigrant from Nigeria, she was killed. It was just a few media recognition, right? So we need to start recognizing and including the Black immigrant, the Black refugees in the movement.
100%.
So I just want to add something to this conversation is that sometimes it looks like victim blaming whenever we talk about like this forms of oppression. So this is something I like to say to Black people too is that we need to also develop our skills to be able to function properly in society. So for us to be able to develop our skills, we need access to resources.
Yeah.
The cost of education is very expensive, especially in North America. It could go up to like 70 something thousand a year and racking up to 500 something thousand, just getting a 4 year degree. So
Mhm.
I think that um, people that have opportunity and have resources can also mentor other young Black people. There's a lot of times that I feel like white older gay men only want to come for younger people because of sex. There's this idea of like BBC. I got to know about it in America. So they say that a young Black person with a mentor has 50% chance of succeeding
Yeah.
more than a Black person without a mentor. Then imagine a refugee that takes averagely 17 years to resettle in a new country. They need family, they need community.
Yeah.
So if you are rich, even though you are middle class or you are a citizen of this country, white or Black, and you are LGBTQ, something little you can do is to be a mentor or a friend to a refugee, understand their plight, and there are ways you can help them that you don't even know. It could be dressing for an interview, it
Yeah.
could be editing a resume, it could be joining a board of a non-profit. It doesn't have to be like something concrete.
Yeah.
It can be as flexible as just being a friend to a Black migrant that is a refugee, and you get to understand their struggle more. You get to become less discriminatory towards them, and you can even add them to your family. So I
Yeah.
think that it's not like it doesn't have to be efficient. There
Sure.
should be some slack in how we mitigate our relationship between white and Black. We are all humans, and that should always be our focus. How we can help people become better.
Yeah. Idafe, you touched upon two things that continue to resonate with me. One is this idea around, equity versus equality, right? For the longest time, we felt that as long as we treat everyone equally, all the programs are equal, it helps everyone kind of advance in society, right? But when you started talking a little bit more about what are some of those levers we need to pull to bring certain groups up to the playing field, right? Up to the table for conversation, up to the job market levels. And that could be through informal means, through friendships, through mentorships, or even very formal ways of, funding education, so on and so forth. That is where we start closing those gaps of equity issues so that everyone then can really have an equal chance to opportunity, right? So I think the examples that you gave really resonated with me, because oftentimes people feel like, to help any group, they have to do a lot. And sometimes these small steps really add up as well, right? So thank you for sharing those.
Yeah.
And so, sorry, go ahead. Were you going to say something or?
Yeah, just small, like,
Yeah, go ahead, Jacob.
yeah. By the time I arrived here, um, I contacted a lot of like different organizations which are working with the people of our kind. But it was so sad, like, just they took months to reply, and if you never responded.
Yeah.
So there is a meeting I went to. It is a coalition kind of a meeting, and I talked to them about it, and I told them, you guys, like, someone sends you emails and then you take ages to respond, and even you don't respond.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Like, I need hope from you, because like when you come here, you're a bit experienced, like, to deal with people of different kinds. So you need to get experience from here. So you need to get in touch with them and know how they run things here. You get that? But I was so surprised that they couldn't respond to me. And like, Jesus, what's
Yeah.
going on down here? I thought things are different, So it
Yeah.
can really be weird. Like, get in touch with us, with people who are like new here, because no one knows us here. They give us this kind of like, I'm sorry to say this, but you were given the organization which receives you here,
Yeah.
and then like, okay, they never beat about the people of our kind, but at the end, they don't give enough what you really need to get.
Yeah.
You get that?
100%.
And sometimes we tell someone, I'm like this, and then someone just like, you get that?
Yeah.
So I think the people have been like in organization for ages of for like sometimes you guys should really help us like develop us, because we are trying to develop ourselves so that we can give back to the people we left behind.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what I can say.
And so I think, Jacob, you mentioned something towards the end, which it resonates with me for all five of you as the panelists for today, which is not only have all of you gone through so much in your lives, in your journey for seeking asylum and then, refugee status and moving to the US, but already pausing to help others get better, right? Improving their lives, improving the lives around you. And it's just incredible to me how both of those processes are happening simultaneously. And so I think we have an audience question that ties in beautifully with this. And I'll just read the question now, which is, you all have covered so many great and important points. Given all of the challenges you face as being Black, refugee, and LGBTIQ, what gives you hope? What is the most inspiring thing you see in the community? I think this is a question that a few others have already chimed in. So why don't we end on that? So what gives you hope for all of you, and what keeps you going, and what is the most inspiring things you're seeing in the broader community?
I didn't get that last. What the good stuff I'm saying, like, what?
Jacob, the question was really, as we wrap up, what is the most inspiring thing you're seeing in your communities as a good thing, and what gives you personal hope? What keeps you?
I think I'll be the last person to answer that. I love it, but I'll be the last person to answer that.
Okay.
So
Go ahead.
I'm just going to say that looking back on history, 50 years ago in America, gay people do not have rights to marry. In 1981, HIV was a big killer for gay people. In 2015, we were allowed to marry. In 2020, you cannot be discriminated for your job based on your sexual orientation. In 1965, Title VII gave a provision that as a Black person, you cannot be discriminated based on your employer. Just in August, the Security Exchange Commission from the New York Stock Exchange published a new requirement for CHRO, that's Head of Human Resource Department, to report on their EEO1 report to improve the amount of people of color that are employed in their organization. That means change is happening in the last 50 years, and change will continue to happen in the next 50 years. But we
That's
require
amazing.
to continue to challenge the status quo of what is next for us together as a community. Us having this conversation is very hopeful that we are giving other people an opportunity to be heard, to be seen. And that is very hopeful for me as an activist.
Thank you, Dafe. Uche, anything from your side as we wrap up this question?
I think for me, in terms of what is motivating, inspiring, or giving me hope, I always look back. I look back from where I started, how my life has transitioned, and I see that I am still growing. And as I grow, I become a better person. And so with that, I think that there's a lot of reason for me to be very grateful. And I want to make sure that I help people, that I impact in people's life, because I want, for instance, like sometimes I have conversation with my Nigerian brothers who are living here about the situation in Nigeria with the LGBTQ people and the same-sex marriage prohibition act that criminalize the LGBTQ people, and of course with the 14 years prison terms. And my argument has always been there is hope for us in Nigeria. One day I believe we're all going to be alive. That one day, Nigeria would get to that stage that the LGBTQ people will be freely, be able to live their life. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I know that America didn't get their gay rights in 1 year. It took a lot of fight. It took 50 something years. So it's not just something that just happened overnight. It's going to take a lot of time for us to get to that place. Yeah. But before then, we just have to keep being positive that one day we're all going to get there. And again, because when I came into this country, I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any family here, right? When I was put in detention, I spent 3 months there. I felt rejected. I felt like nobody cares for me or even know that I existed, because I was seeing other people receiving visitors, letters, and things like that. But not until I started getting letters from other groups and started getting visitors, I felt like there is hope for me, because these people don't even know me. And now they're coming to see me, give me emotional support and hope, and they're sending me letters. So with that, I feel like when I come out of detention, I want to be able to help other people who are like me, who don't have voice. I want to be that voice for them. Of course, it's not going to be easy. It has not been easy. It's a lot of challenge, but it's something that, it gives me joy when I see people, when I'm helping people. So that alone has always been my motivation.
Thank you for that. And I think that's a very great way to kind of wrap up this session. Firstly, a heartfelt thank you to all three of you, Dafe, Uche, Jacob, and Vanilla and Craig as well. A huge shout out to your organizations, RDJ Shelter, Queer Detainee Empowerment Project, but also ORAM for hosting this session. Those on the line, feel free to check them out on social media and their websites to see how you can get involved. Dafe gave a great few ideas on how to start, incrementally. And also reach out to us. We're expanding our work with different organizations, with corporations, with employee resource groups. So we have great ideas on how we can continue this journey together. And with that, a very heartfelt thank you for all of you to join in, listen to us, and thank you to the panelists for a very educating but also inspirational session today. With that, thank you all.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.